I'm just delighted to say good morning to Omar El Akkad in Toronto, and not just good morning, but congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm so delighted to meet you here. We were just playing that moment where your name was announced. I don't know, as you watched this morning, if you were able to take in the moment in a way you perhaps did not last night, but take us through, watching it, what it was like and what you were really experiencing in the flesh the first time.
Yeah, it's weird. I had, I don't remember anything I said up there. I barely remember sort of going up on the stage. I had successfully avoided watching any video of it until this interview right now, when I was seeing it for the first time. No, I should have seen that coming. It was something that I'd only been able to think about in the abstract leading up to the moment, and I was stunned for the duration of my time up there, and I'm still stunned now.
Have you had an opportunity to celebrate, Omar?
No, I stayed up all night, but that's because I couldn't fall asleep.
Now, what were you going over
like
in your? What was keeping you from sleeping? What were you thinking about?
I suspect residual adrenaline and nerves. It's the Giller process is such that you find out you've been longlisted, and then about a month later you find out you've been shortlisted, and then a month later you find out who wins. And so, for this fairly long process, it's been something that's very difficult to sort of conceptualize. It's an honor that I've never had before. I may never have again. I've been trying to take it in, but it's a lot.
You said you don't realize what you said on stage. Well, I can tell you that you did what just about every Giller winner does, which I always find so touching, and that is you paid tribute to your mom, who was there with you, and you said, "This is yours, everything's yours." What has the impact of your mother been for you?
I'm an only child, and my parents are both Egyptian. I'm Egyptian, but my dad had to leave Egypt when I was 5. We've been migrants since the age of 5, and I'm their only child, and I can't stress this enough how much of a huge disappointment I've been for the vast majority of my life. The last time my mom watched me win an award in person was 30-some years ago in grade school. So she is a long-suffering and deeply patient human being, and I owe her and my father everything.
You paid tribute to him as well. A migrant at the age of 5. That is the issue right at the core of this Giller Prize winning book, What Strange Paradise. And people who are listening to our conversation would really know the issues at the very core of it, because if they've seen in our headlines, and you used to work as a journalist at the Globe and Mail prior to becoming an author, the story of little Alan Kurdi and the Syrian migrant crisis, and the father and the daughter back in 2019 who were trying to escape from the United States, or from Mexico into the United States, and who died in those canals. As I understand it, those are the issues that at the very core of this. What were those stories? What was the impact that those stories had on you as you set out to write this?
I started working on the novel in 2012. I was on assignment in Cairo, and I was driving around with an old friend who was complaining about rent. The rent's too high, the rent's too high. And at one point I asked him, "What's the rent in your apartment building?" And he said, "Well, do you mean the locals' price or do you mean the Syrians' price?" And it became apparent that if you were a refugee coming into Egypt, you could be gouged. You could be charged 3 times as much, because what were you going to do about it? And I started thinking about just how casual that cruelty was. Over the course of the following years of writing the book, researching it, and then writing it, these images seared themselves into my head. And one of the things about these images is that they would show up wrapped in this bubble of outrage. People would be outraged that this was allowed to happen. But that outrage would only last for about 24 hours, and then we would move on to the next thing and the next thing. And what I wanted to do with this novel, to the best of my ability, is do the opposite of that. I wanted to dwell. And so it's very much a novel written against this notion of instantaneous forgetting, that it's enough to be temporarily outraged and then move on.
And a novel, but indeed a fable. And in the telling of the story of the migrant crisis in this way, what do you hope to bring to our understanding of the issue?
I used to have a much clearer answer to that question with my first novel. I thought people would read it and it would cause them to think a certain way or change their mode of thinking. And then universally, the books were read in an entirely different way than what I intended. I think, when you're in this line of work, if you can get somebody to look through a different pair of eyes for a few hundred pages, I think that's enough. My hope is with everything I write, that it causes someone to think more deeply of another human being, and not indulge in the privilege of looking away. If the novel can do that, then I'm more than happy. Anything beyond that is also beyond me.
When you talk about the outrage that we feel so intently at various stories in the news and then it goes away, I mean, that's the nature, isn't it, of what was your work in the Globe and Mail, what is my work every day. We have headlines and big emphasis on certain stories and then they disappear. Is the frustration with that reality, I guess, of the news cycle, is that what led you to lead it, to pursue things in more depth and more satisfaction to you and become an author instead?
I mean, I think you and I both know the sort of the short-term spike of journalism,
Sure.
right? A story comes out, it gets immense attention, and then 2 days later, everyone's moved on. I think part of that is the nature of the work, and part of it is sort of a psychological self-defense mechanism. During the Trump years, I genuinely couldn't tell you what the scandal of the day was 2 years ago today. We move on and we move on. I think one of the things about fiction and novel writing in particular is that you don't get that spike. You get this thing that just sort of marinates for a very, very long time. And I don't know which one of those is more effective in sort of affecting change. But I do know that when I move into the world of fiction, it's a much longer lasting thing that I'm creating. And that's what I've been drawn to for all of my life, is just that idea of marinating in a story as opposed to having the spike and then moving on to the next one.
I think I'm marinating in asking you questions. I'm so enjoying this conversation, but I'm hearing in my ear, which is the nature of my world, that I'm moving to the end of the time I have allotted, so I won't even ask you about, I think, some of your journalistic experience, the detail, how you deal with tragedy. It's also interesting to see how it plays out in your book. And I also do want to mention your first novel, American War, because war in the context of a climate emergency, it could not be more appropriate for what we're talking about right now. Is it with COP26? Is that on your mind right now, Omar?
It is. It was not a novel that I thought would be seen as sort of literal prophecy by any stretch of the imagination. But you think of fiction as this thing that's supposed to intrude on reality, and then reality ends up intruding on your fiction. That's a very surreal place to be. I genuinely hope that not much in that novel comes true, mostly because I spend a lot of my time in America, and so it would be nice if it was not in a state of outright warfare. But it's been a very strange thing to see where the world has moved since that novel came out.
Well, you have fans on our team. As a result of that debut novel, you'll have a whole new legion of fans as a result of now your second, with the Giller Prize winning second novel for you. As I let you go, do you have thoughts for third people can anticipate?
So far, I have a single paragraph. Okay. It is not very good, so 100% of the manuscript needs to go right now. But
and do you have an idea, though, that you can share?
I have nothing but an idea, and I refuse to share it because I want the right to ditch it if it turns out not to work.
Okay, well, I hope I have the opportunity to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for the time today, and again, congratulations on a most deserving honor.
Thank you so much.